Have you ever experienced or imagined yourself speaking before a huge crowd? Good day, grade 11 learners of Pulilio National High School. This is Ma'am Dana Marlu Imangahas. Welcome back to our Oral Communication in Context class. Today, we will talk about the principles of effective speech delivery right after this. The success of any speech does not only depend on its context and components, but also on how it is delivered in front of the audience. This video is here to help you master the 11th most essential learning competency of the subject, which is to use principles of effective speech delivery, focusing on articulation, modulation, stage presence, facial expressions, gestures and movements, including rapport with the audience. After going through the module, you are expected to identify the principles of effective speech delivery and demonstrate effective speech delivery. It is important that you master the previous lesson on the use of principles for effective speech writing because you will find them applicable in achieving the target competency in this module. You have learned that an effective written speech constitutes various principles such as audience profile, logical organization, duration, word choice, and grammatical correctness. Certainly, there is no shortcut recipe for being a good speaker. Indeed, nothing is automatic. You must make it happen. This module has lessons that will serve you that purpose, and that is how to become a good public speaker. Luckily, there are some tools and principles that can be helpful to you in presenting and delivering your speech like a pro. Discover yourself as a great speaker and be ready to see its wonders as you see it come to pass. Before we dig deeper, I want you to get your pen and paper and let us answer first some questions that deal with our lesson. The directions is to choose the principle of speech delivery presented in the statements that I will flash. I will give you 5 seconds to answer each question. Number 1. Professor Janet often focuses on the clarity of her words, pronunciation, and message or blank to effectively teach her students. Our choices are letter A, articulation, letter B, modulation, letter C, stage presence, and letter D, rapport. And the correct answer is letter A, articulation. Number 2. As a comedian, Kiko observes blank as he adjusts the volume and pitch of his voice in order to effectively crack his jokes in front of the audience. The choices are letter A, facial expression, letter B, rapport, letter C, stage presence, and letter D, modulation. And the answer is letter D, modulation. Number 3. Mylene, who is a public speaking trainer, always reminds her student to develop blank by dressing appropriately and observing good posture. Our choices are letter A, modulation, letter B, stage presence, letter C, rapport, and letter D, facial expression. The answer is letter B, stage presence. Number 4. The president often accompanies his speech with body movements coupled with blank to better deliver his message to the television viewers. Our choices are letter A, facial expression, letter B, rapport, letter C, stage presence, and letter D, gesture. The answer is letter D, gesture. Number 5. Luis Manzano demonstrates good connection or blank with the audience members of his top-rated game show. Our choices are letter A, gesture, letter B, rapport, letter C, articulation, and letter D, modulation. And the answer is letter B, rapport. The questions that you had just encountered are the ones included in our discussion. Speech delivery is a matter of verbal communication. It is based on how you use your voice and body to convey the message expressed by your words. It combines a certain degree of formality with the best attributes of good conversation, directness, animation, vocal and facial expressiveness, and lively sense of communication. That is according to Perez 2015. While according to Stephen Lucas 2011, the author of The Art of Public Speaking, a good delivery means that you are capable and able to present your message in a clear, coherent, and interesting way. Hence, effective speaking means being able to say what you need to say in a manner that it is heard and acted upon. Furthermore, speech delivery is an art, not a science. What works for one speaker may fail for another speaker. Before we discuss the different tools or principles one by one, I want you to watch first a video clip about how to deliver a perfect speech.
Tip number 1, make eye contact with your audience. Make sure you feel connected to them and they'll feel connected to your message. That's in your body centering, your eye contact and open chest.
Well, good afternoon everyone. What a lovely ceremony it was. Firstly, I'd like to start by saying congratulations to the bride and groom, Steve and Sophie, or now Mr. and Mrs. Johnson, and as we'll all have to call them.
Fantastic, beautiful, succinct, clear, to the point. All right, let's do the negative version of that, clouding everything.
Good afternoon. Hello everyone. I've lost my I've lost my place. Here we are. Congratulations, Steve, and your new bride on your wonderful wedding day. We've had good weather for it. I'd just like to start by
Final catastrophe, absolutely brilliant. You know, so we get the feeling that you don't even know whose party this is by that kind of behaviour, and it's entirely inappropriate for the occasion. Tip number 2, we've got to make sure that there's no finger wagging at the audience, there's no fist pounding unnecessarily on tabletops, and you keep your body wide and not narrow and restricted, and certainly no hands in pockets.
Well, good afternoon everyone. I hope you enjoyed the ceremony as much as I did. It was wonderful. Firstly, we should start by all of us saying congratulations to Steve and Sophie, or Mr. and Mrs. Johnson, as we'll all now have to call them. Congratulations. I hope you have a very long life together.
perfect gesture. Nice open palm, nice and clear, not fiddling around. Let's try hopping, hands in pockets, then a bit of finger wagging and a bit of fist pounding.
We should start by saying congratulations to Steve and Sophie, or Mr. and Mrs. Johnson, as we'll have to call them now. I don't know if you remember, Steve. Do you remember? Well, Sophie, you might remember as well. Any of you might remember. But when you remember we were at college and we were in the car with what's her name? With that one.
Good. Isn't that amazing? That effect just kind of narrows down the audience reception. They just feel it's just one person being pointed to. They feel implicated. We feel left out. So don't feel the rest of us have to be excluded. Include us all in that. Tip number 3, no ums or ahs, and don't fade out at the end of a sentence. Keep the breath underneath.
Well, I'd like to start with a joke, which I remember from when we were both at school. Do you remember those times, Steve? Well, I'm going to tell you a nice story about that anyway, which I'm sure everyone is going to like to hear.
Fantastic. Keep the dynamic right the way through to the end of the thought. That's fantastic. Let's do the flip side, the negative end of speech making with ums and ahs. Go.
Well, I'm going to start with telling a story about. Do you remember when we were at school together? Well, it's a kind of a joke as opposed to a story. So,
Brilliant. So what we get are pauses, and what we get is something that we're absolutely embarrassed out here because we think, are you in command or not? And where are you going to get to the point?
The video clip that you just watched only tackled few of many tips that you have to know as a public speaker. Now, let us discuss some more tools or principles for effective speech delivery. The first one is articulation. It is pronouncing the words and speaking with clear diction and effectively transmits the message of the speaker. A speaker must fully open his mouth to distinctly enunciate the different words. People always judge how well you speak in general. The perceived intellect or education is sometimes used to measure how well you articulate. The instance in how well and precisely you form vowels and consonants using your lips, tongue, jaw, and palate to form the sounds to speak is crucial in making your message get across. On the same idea, diction and enunciation are the other forms of articulation. Next is modulation. It is the capability to adjust or manipulate the resonance of the vocal tone. A speaker should vary the speech to strengthen or reinforce the message. Modulation happens when you control or adjust the tone or volume of your voice as you try to lower your voice to a loud whisper in order to get the attention of your audience, as they find your message more appealing, dramatic, and mysterious. Next is the stage presence. This is the speaker's ability to get and secure the audience interest in listening to him or her through his or her presentation style that refers to stage presence. Every time the speaker faces his audience, he is encouraged to keep his poise, posture, gestures, and movements since they make or break the presentation. Hence, a good stage presence essentially engages the audience into the performance. Now, let's talk about facial expressions, gestures, and movements. To effectively communicate emotions and enthusiasm while speaking, the speaker must use emphatic and descriptive gestures. These help enhance the verbal content of your speech. Gestures should appear spontaneous but purposeful. Movements from the waist down should be decisively used to emphasize a point or as a transition during a speech. Facial expression builds connection with the audience. It shows sincerity and credibility to the message. It conveys the feelings of the speaker. Gesture emphasizes a point, expresses emotion, releases tension, and engages audience. A speaker ought to not be as still as a log. He or she must move. The movements ought to signal the transition from one idea to what is the preceding or the next. Movements add drama to the speech and break monotony of where you are placed. Rapport, which is the last on our list, happens when you have everything in concordance or harmony. It is establishing a connection with the listeners or the audience. Furthermore, you can connect with them through eye contact, speaking naturally, and relating with them. Now, let us watch the second video, which is titled 4 Ways to End a Speech with a Bang, to know some techniques from an expert.
Hello, I'm Brian Tracy, and as you know, I've done more than 5,000 seminars to more than 5 million people in 70 countries over the years, and I know a little bit about the subject. So I want to give you 4 ways that you can use to end a speech with a bang, so that it ends with people really happy that you spoke to them. Your final words at the end of your talk can have an extreme impact on your audience. Carefully chosen, your final words can cause your audience to think and feel and act differently than they would have without your influence. Very often, it is your final words which are the message that your audience remembers the longest. So one of the best ways to close your talk is to end with a call to action. A call to action is the best way to wrap up your talk with strength and power. Remember, the whole purpose of professional speaking is to get people to take an action that they would not have taken in the absence of your speaking. So you must be clear, what action do I want these people to take? It's almost like a sales presentation is at the end of your sales presentation, the action that you want the person to take is to buy your product. At the end of a speech, your action that you want them to take is you want them to do what you were suggesting that they do. So for example, a closing statement with a powerful call to action is this, is we have great challenges and great opportunities, and with your help, we will meet them and make this next year the best year in our history. That's a great way for a manager or a director or even the chairman of the board to end a talk about the state of the business. Whatever you say, imagine an exclamation point at the end. As you approach the conclusion of your talk, pick up your energy and tempo. Speak with strength and emphasis. Drive the final point home. Another effective way to close your talk is with a quick summary. As you approach the end of your talk, you can say something like, let me briefly restate these main points that we just talked about. And then use your fingers. You then list your key points one by one and repeat them to the audience, showing how each of them links in to each of the other points. Audiences enjoy a linear presentation or a repetition of what they have just heard. This makes it clear that you're coming to the end of your talk, and it also reminds them of your key points, so it's easier for them to remember and take action. So you can also close with a story. As you reach the end of your talk, you can say, let me tell you a story that illustrates what I've been talking about. People love stories. You then tell a brief story with a moral and tell the audience what the moral is. So it's clear this is the point of the story. Don't leave it to them to figure it out for themselves. Often you can close with a story that illustrates your key points and then clearly links back to the key message that you're making with your speech. Another way to close your talk is to close it with inspiration. If you've given an uplifting talk, remember that hope is and always has been the great religion of mankind. People love to be motivated and inspired to be and do something different and better in the future. Thanks for watching.
Let us have a quick summary on how to end our speech. Number 1, close with a story. Number 2, always include a moral to your story. And number 3, be inspirational, which I think personally is a very good technique to end a speech. After knowing the principles of effective speech delivery, let us try to answer the questions that I will flash. Number 1. It is the formation of clear and distinct sounds in speech. It is the formation of clear and distinct sound in speech. The correct answer is articulation. Number 2. It is a change of key in music or of the sound of a person's voice. It is a change of key in music or of the sound of a person's voice. The answer is modulation. Number 3. It is the ability to get and secure the audience's interest in listening to presentation. It is the ability to get and secure the audience's interest in listening to presentation. The correct answer is stage presence. Number 4. It helps enhance the verbal content of our speech. It helps enhance the verbal content of our speech. The correct answer is facial expressions. Last number. This happens when you have everything in concordance or harmony. This happens when you have everything in concordance or harmony. The correct answer is rapport. If you got all the correct answer, good job! Please do not forget to answer to the assessment and the other activities in your learning activity sheet. Another activity to be accomplished is the performance task, which is to recite a speech considering all the different principles of effective speech delivery. You must make a recorded speech video presentation. You have to make a simple speech as a life coach. A life coach is someone who helps people identify their goals and develop an actionable plan to achieve them. Your goal is to help the people who were affected by the recent COVID-19 pandemic in our town, Polillo, Quezon. This will help them somehow to overcome what they feel towards this crisis. Be guided as well by the rubric indicated in your WHLP. Before I end, I want you to always remember that speech oral interpretation is a personal way of pulling words from a speech and giving life to it through the speaker's voice and body. You can speak well if your tongue can deliver the message of your heart. That is according to John Ford. Once again, this is Ma'am Dana Marlui Mangahas, your teacher in the subject Oral Communication in Context. Thank you and happy learning!